Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Beyond the White Noise Conspiracy Corner. I'm Aaron O'Rourke. I'm lead investigator for Beyond the White Noise. We've got my co-host, Stephen Foy. He's our media manager and investigator.
Hey.
And tonight's guest, we have author of UFOs, the First World War, Nigel Watson. How are we today?
All right, hi, thank you. Thanks for letting me on.
Good. Right, so I can hear a lot of feedback today.
Yeah, feedback. Oh, that's a good start, isn't it? There's not any. Hang on. Just carry on with the what you've been up to this week and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay, I think I've figured that out now.
We got it,
yeah? Again, that was my fault because I've left the sound on in the chat room.
Right.
Good start.
Okay. Well done, Aaron.
Okay, so yeah.
What have you been up to
this
week?
For a couple of months,
what have you been up to for a couple of months then?
In all honesty, mate, I haven't really done a lot. I've had some personal issues that I've had to work through. Still working through them. Nothing major for anyone who is that interested, which I'm assuming they're not. My car's still an utter bin and
Nice.
money pit. So yeah, that's needless and pointless. So it's more like I'd have better luck riding a bowling ball.
Probably
Basically.
better steering, to be honest with you, mate.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, the only good thing that we're radio, and that's temperamental.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've been out on a couple of investigations in the meantime. I'm not going to disclose where they are right now, because it's not that we haven't finished off what we need to finish off. It's just there's more that we need to cover on them. I think.
Quite a lot, weren't there?
Oh god, yeah, two massive sites. You know, and unfortunately, with the first one we done, it was ridiculously huge. It was a good 15 to 20 acres of land, if not more, with about 10 buildings, you know, and between 6 to 8 of us going, it's near enough impossible to try and get all that done in one particular night. The second one we done, again, it was quite a big site, nowhere near as big, but it was just
right
a
over there.
lot of space. Yeah, it was, and I think where we could have got that little bit more done. Right, are you still there, Nigel? Yeah.
Yeah, I've just come back. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, mate. I really don't.
Yeah, I'm all right now.
Everything all right there, Steve? Steve?
Are we still here?
Yeah, we're still here. Yeah, still
Still here? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have no idea what happened there. I don't know what that was. I haven't got a clue.
Right, okie dokie. But yeah, I was just saying to Nigel that we predominantly do paranormal investigating, and we've been doing the vidcasts for about 6 months.
Must be from March now. 6 months, easy.
Yeah. So you know, and it's been a moderate success, I think, hasn't it? You know, we haven't done too badly with it. At the same time, there is room for improvement. What about you, Steve?
Yeah.
What have you been up to, mate? What have you been doing? Tell us.
Well, this week I've been helping push for this coming Sunday's show, which I've got a guest on called Daryl Berry Jr. With the boot giveaway. All you need to do is basically just say you're going to the event, and the winner will be picked from the event guest list only on Monday to get a copy of his free book this week. As regards to conspiracies, there's just been Getting ready for tonight's show. We did a bit of research on any UFO stories. There's a couple that we will cover in the news in a second, and a couple of other stories that are for later dates and stuff like that. But apart from that, it's just been researching really, going over paranormal evidence that we've recently gathered again and again, making sure I've got everything covered.
Yeah.
But
So it's been a busy time really for you then, bud, yeah?
Yeah, it's pretty busy. Yeah, I mean, I like it that way though. I prefer it that way, to be honest with you. I like to have my fingers in many different pies and don't say a word. All right, don't say nothing.
Saying nothing,
right.
Mate.
You know what I mean? I like to be be busy and stuff like that with many different things. Sometimes I might get stuck on the one topic, which I did do a few months back, as you probably remember. I won't mention what it is because we've got that coming up in a few weeks.
Oh yeah.
I had to stop in the end. I was brainwashed with it. It was just constant all the time.
Some stuff I think can be really absorbing.
I literally felt.
Before you know it, mate, you've missed a week of your life in a blink of an eye.
So yeah, it has been like a busy 2 weeks or so. But apart from it, hasn't been too hectic whereby I've been snowed under with it. It's been okay.
Cool. Okay. Nigel, what about you? What's been going on with yourself? What's new for you?
All right. Well, this week I've just been looking at the different kinds of information you can get online regarding government archives, because more and more materials being released to the public. And the US government and the British government have made a lot of files online, but other countries also have put information on, or have made it available. I think places like Spain, Australia, Chile, and
I think recently Germany do something as well.
Yeah, there's just been a lot of legal action to get German files released, but I think some of them you can actually access now. I'm not sure of what the web link is now, but I looked it up. A lot of it's about search for extraterrestrial intelligence research and just general hypotheses about what would happen if aliens visited. But I think it has some other sort of UFO-related material as well.
Yeah.
So I've been what I'm doing is compiling a sort of guide to all the online material. But it keeps changing. I think like the US ones, like the FBI files and the CIA ones, but we've got a lot of material on there, but then we keep changing the internet address, because I did a bit of research into this a few years back, and then I found the old links go dead, and then we put new stuff on. So
wasn't the website called the Blue Book as well?
Oh yeah.
There was that, wasn't there, where you could basically go through an entire index of things, but as the Americans do like to do, the more you read, the more black lines there were coming up, and it's like, I really want to see this. I really want to read about it. And all the juicy bits out. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Which I think makes a lot of people suspicious. And to do with the likes of what you've just been saying with Germany, trying to withhold everything. I mean, why? What's your opinion on that? Why do you think they do that? Is it basically to keep people in suspense? A little bit of a carrot on a fishing rod, if you like, or do you think they've genuinely got something there that they don't want the population to know?
I think the problem is the whole subject came up in 1947 with the kind of onset of the Cold War. So in a way, they had to keep these things secret because they thought there might be enemy aircraft, especially from the Soviet Union. So it was probably at a very time in human history when there was a lot of need for secrecy and conspiracy. There was films, later James Bond and spies. Yeah. A lot of intrigue. So UFOs kind of came into that mix quite early on. And I think part of it was the fact that the United States Air Force and other agencies did eagerly look into the subject. And I think the United States Air Force in particular was even keen on looking at whether they are, if there were extraterrestrial craft. I think someone higher up the chain then said, oh, that's a load of rubbish, and even if they are alien, they've nothing to do with us unless they start shooting at us. So, and in a way,
wasn't it someone called Heinrich who actually started Project Blue Book? He started off as a skeptic, but actually ended up believing more of it than most, because there was just far too many cases that he just simply couldn't explain. Now, out of the whole percentage of all the cases, the percentage was only around about, say, 5 to 7, maybe 10% at best. But there was that many that 10% was still adding up to like maybe a couple of thousand cases that were just simply unexplained.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think the part of it that was the Air Force couldn't handle that much material really, and they didn't have many resources actually. I think they did actually send Heinrich to some UFO hotspots and to major cases, but generally I think even he complained that he was never given enough information and resources to actually investigate. And the old Project Blue Book really was there to deal with public demand, really. It was a PR relations exercise.
It was actually to actually try and debunk most of them first and foremost, really.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if you've seen that, Adam, like yourself.
In all honesty, mate, no. It's I mean, I do like the whole idea of the. Hey up, George. Get out.
That's me out.
That's George. He's our resident streaker.
You're the resident streaker.
Keep it clean, George. I mean, as I say, you know, I do think that's the Mr. Foy, isn't it?
The Mr. Foy, Sir Foy, yeah.
The Mr. Foy. I do take a big interest in reading up to do with UFOs and things like that, because I do think the more it's unexplainable, the better it feels. You know, but to do with a lot of the things, to do with debunking and stuff like that, I don't read it, and it's not.
Yeah, I get what you
because
mean.
I'm ignorant. It's not because I'm ignorant to it. It's more the fact that, I mean, personally, I do think there is aliens around. You know, I mean, bloody hell, if you look at some of these people who go on Jeremy Kyle, you know, sure, half of these are from this planet. You know.
Yeah.
But I do genuinely think that there are aliens around, and again, Steve, I've spoke to you to do with this before today. Yeah, I do think they walk amongst us now. You know, it's.
You're not the only person to think
it's a difficult one to explain, but I don't want to read about it being debunked, because it's a letdown.
Sorry, mate. Go on.
Yeah, I was just saying, mate, I don't particularly read to do with people who try and debunk stuff on UFOs, aliens, you know, anything extraterrestrial, simply because I am a firm believer of it. And it's kind of like, I don't want to read it because it pissed me off, and it's kind of like that feeling you get when you realise that Father Christmas isn't real. You know, it's that bitter disappointment, and then it's. I know it's a strange comparison to me. You know, I do realise as the words are coming out of my mouth, it's an odd one to me, but it's that type of feeling, that type of disappointment. You know, when you think. You know, I just don't. I don't like it, because I don't like the whole disappointment.
No, but I know what you mean. I was just going to say. Then I was talking to Nigel before we actually came live on air. I'm actually in the middle of just started writing a blog for our blog page on the whole UFO phenomenon, and I basically started it off by saying the fact that this day and age, if the fact that mankind itself thinks that it's the only life on one single planet out of all the possible planets that we're discovering every single day, more and more of them, it's just naive and ludicrous now, to be honest with you.
It is.
It's mind-boggling. So,
why would so vast as the universe be just have this one life form?
Precisely. I mean, obviously it's a possibility, but there's more. there's more odds for it not being possible
Yeah.
than there is against now, and I think that's where it's shifted. Do you know what I mean? But going back a few, like to when you used to think the Earth was flat, it maybe wasn't so much. You know what I mean? You used to think that we were the centre of the universe and all that, but you know, until we looked up and seen the sun that day. But
I've argued this with some other people though, that believers have more fun, because if you're a skeptic, you're pouring water on cases, and it's not.
You're probably right.
It's not
there.
so much fun, really.
No, you're right there.
The most exciting books are things like George Adamski and his flights in flying saucers to Saturn and meeting, you know, the council of elders and these venture, you know.
What the likes of Star Trek was born from and stuff like that. Everyone loves that, you know what I mean? Well, I do, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of Star Trek myself. I used to be when I was a kid, but as I've got older, I don't even like Star Wars. I don't know what it is.
I don't like Star Wars myself.
But it's, yeah, I mean, to do with the science behind like going to Jupiter, I think it's the reason you can't go on Jupiter. Obviously, I think, if am I right in saying it's like a gaseous planet?
Yeah.
It's, you know, but apparently the pressure's like 10 times what it is here, and you just end up, you get flattened. As soon as you got anywhere near it, you just end up like a squidge.
Yeah, I think it's Brian Cox was talking about that on one of his space shows. I think he called it density or something stupid like that.
Yeah, it's too powerful obviously once you get too close, it's like you start exploding, basically.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, I think it's there for anybody who's interested, mainly, isn't it? You know, it's always been, and it's always going to be, a hot topic of conversation. Obviously, the most famous case around is Roswell, Area 51.
Yeah. Over here, to keep it more UK, is the one I've just put up then.
Rendlesham Forest. Yeah, it is. You know, but it is what it is. It's a topic for debate. It's always going to be, until the day something pops out of some kind of spaceship and goes, look, here we are. What are you going to do?
We've been here for ages, you know what I mean?
It's always going to be up for debate, isn't it? You're going to have your believers, you're going to have your non-believers.
I think the problem with Roswell and Rendlesham, though, they're like fine wines, they mature over time and become more complex. Whereas, you know, something like Roswell was just a footnote in UFO history. If you got any UFO book in the 70s, there's hardly any mention of Roswell. And same with Rendlesham Forest. Now, if you wrote a history of British ufology, you would have to include that. But it's a fairly recent case, really, in the kind of timeline of sightings. And with Rendlesham, there's kind of diversity between the main witnesses. I think we've kind of fallen out between them, and there's things like binary codes. And I read somewhere the main witness suddenly come out a few years back and said he had he remembered binary code all of a sudden and written down in his notebook. Yeah.
So what's your personal take on just Rendlesham then, Nigel? Is it just if you just stick to Rendlesham, what's your personal take on it itself?
Well, I think it's a kind of one of those situations where a different things have come together. I think on that particular night there was a re-entry of debris from a Soviet satellite.
Yeah.
And also, you know, and there's talk of radar recordings. And also there was sightings of the lights by the United States Air Force personnel, which seemed to go over a period of 2 nights, really. So perhaps on the first night it could have been something to do with a re-entry of the satellite. And the second night might have just been that we're actually looking for something, and, you know, there's the talk of
looking for the said satellite.
Yeah. And some people have said perhaps it was a cover-up of something like an air crash or a cruise missile, because at that time there was a lot of debate about cruise missiles being based in Britain but looked after by the United States Air Force and things like that. And I think yeah, there's a combination of factors going on there, and I think the problem with the whole memorandum is it was actually written a sort of week or two after the event. And you'd have thought if it was so momentous, you'd have had far more research. You'd have written a sort of 10-page document at least to.
There'd have been a bigger report, an incident report.
See, now, I mean, to do with Rendlesham, I mean, you know, a lot of people forget that it's right on top of 2 Air Force bases.
Yeah. It is, yeah.
You know, a lot of people have also said that, or I think it was a soldier's witness statement, has basically came out and said, well, you know, all these lights that you're seeing, this big tubular light, it was from the lighthouse, which is near the line of sight.
I think that's
you know, and then apparently there was a top secret weapons testing facility, which was testing out atomic weapons. You know, and
it was quite a sensitive area, wasn't it?
Oh yeah,
all sorts of strange things there besides, cruise missiles or anything. So it wasn't, it's got quite a history, hasn't it, of military testing and occupation there. And my favourite report, though, is that Rendlesham is a pile of crap, and that some farmer had said he was burning a load of compost at night, and it was his firebag cost.
Is that where the swamp gas theory come from?
And I think there's been other people who said it was perhaps tractor lights that some tractor was operating that night. So I think there again, that just shows, though, like with the believers, you say it escalates with, people saying they touched it and that was binary codes and things. So it escalates on the believer side of things, but it also escalates on the skeptics side. The skeptics come up with more and more elaborate theories and ideas, or some of them are just jokes anyway. But that's another thing,
For me personally, you've got to draw the line somewhere between honest debate and downright stupidity. Like Rendlesham is a perfect example with the lighthouse. Now that lighthouse was, and probably still is, a local landmark in that particular, especially with 2 Air Force bases.
And at the time, it was probably functioning as well, mate.
Precisely, it's a focal point for when they're coming into the bases for the pilots, maybe. So they're going to know what the lighthouse looks like. They're going to know what times that the lights come on and off during the night time or whatever. And to suggest that these US Air Forcemen were getting confused between that lighthouse light and whatever this thing was in the middle of Rendlesham Forest, it's just downright disrespectful. It's just degrading. If it's going to be, if you're going to honestly debate about it, then that's fine. Do you know what I mean? I'm all for that. So I think like you call yourself, Nigel, like an optimistic skeptic. Do you know what I mean? And that's probably the best way to put it. If it is something of, our own doing, or if it's a natural occurrence or whatever, then at least look at it properly and do it properly. Don't just degrade people like that, and it just tarnishes the whole thing.
I think the problem is there's a polarization that there's people who are believers or skeptics, and the skeptics, whatever the case is, they'll find an explanation for it. It seems like the problem is if there's a case and then somebody comes up with an explanation, people are happy with that, even though the explanation might be rubbish. That occurred in the sort of 60s, where the UFOs were being dismissed by Project Blue Book, and now in recent years, the CIA have admitted that their U-2 spy planes created 80% of sightings in that period. So we've gone from a total cover-up to a sort of revelation.
It was like, but at the time we couldn't really tell you.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people also forget, there's, between I think there's a lot of blurred lines, isn't there, between what's actually fact and what's actually fiction. And a classic case for that was the broadcast from Orson Welles in, was it the late 30s?
The War of the Worlds one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a massive fan of the musical version of War of the Worlds with by Jeff Wayne. It's one of them. I'm not a classical music lover, and normally I skip right past the classical music section because I'm just not that type of guy. just yet. You know.
Just yet, yeah.
I won't even listen to Radio 2 all that much because you know the BBC take me for an awful lot of money throughout the year, and I refuse to. I digress anyway. But, you know, it's War of the Worlds broadcast. It was, you know, that was allegedly caused mass hysteria.
But it did, yeah.
You know, and it was done around Halloween. Around Halloween time.
It's October. Yeah.
It's a great way to. It's a great Halloween type of thing, I suppose. You know, oh wait a minute, we're getting invaded, because it was originally set out as news bulletins.
That's right, yeah.
You know, but a lot of people, you know, they were saying it was. Hang on, let me see. What's that? It was the Columbia Broadcasting System radio network that it was broadcast on. You know. There we go, 30th of October 1938, you know, and a lot of people have disputed that there was mass panic because at that point in time, you know, that program had a relatively low amount of listeners, but again, it doesn't boil down to the whole listenership, does it?
I can't really see that,
and then it's Chinese whispers. Oh wait, have you heard what's on the radio?
Well, see, I reckon back in the 1930s at least, right, something so just after the war maybe, a lot of people listened to the radio a lot more.
Oh yeah,
a lot more obviously.
Sure,
but I think though it's hard to know the real impact of it, because some people have downgraded it, saying there wasn't the mass panic, but the next morning there is actually newsreel footage of Orson Welles making apologies about it, so it must have had some sort of impact, wasn't it?
Whether the impact was large or small, you know, obviously he's done that just to have a bit of fun. You know, it's Halloween. What can we do? It's normally ghosts and ghouls. I know. Let's play with aliens.
But in a way,
it's totally different. You don't expect that.
No, but it's the worst thing that could possibly have happened for ufology, really, because it's been a shining example of why we should keep UFOs suppressed, because we can't handle it. Everybody would be leaving the cities and raiding supermarkets and running for the hills. You know, like
we do that now. There's a petrol crisis.
I mean, do you think that had any bearing on the UFO sightings boom?
Yeah, I think it did, really, because there was a lot of fear generated by UFO sightings. If you look at the 50s sightings, there's a Thomas Mantle who was chasing a light in the sky, you know, whether it was a balloon or Venus or something. But there's something sinister about, you know, that he was chasing a UFO of some sort and crashed and killed himself. And a lot of military people were seeing UFOs and civilian pilots. You know, fair enough, now they're saying there might have been U-2 spy aircraft or whatever, but I think there was quite a lot of fear generated by UFO sightings. And do
you think it's easy to certainly now, looking back in hindsight on that period though, is to, now that you've kind of sort of not officially admitted about the U-2 spy plane, but sort of, well, yeah, we did have that sort of thing, that you can just explain them away now with that, because they've sort of half agreed that did exist. You know what I mean? And to me, it just seems like every now and again, they just keep explaining these cases away, which at the time, as you said yourself, the military pilots and the civilian airline pilots, they're the ones that are up there flying the planes that we've got.
Yeah.
So they're going to be the perfect witnesses, aren't they, to anything like that, really? And you're just explaining them away with these stories that we can't prove because they won't admit it anyway. So it's a vicious circle, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. I think as well that different government agencies have run fast and loose with the subject, because around Area 51 we might encourage the belief in UFOs and things, because then it'll distract people from actually looking at actual experimental craft they are making. So sometimes it's a way of scaring people off, because serious journalists won't look at a case if it's got little green men and UFOs associated. They think, oh, it's a load of rubbish and, you know, it's a load of fantasy and stuff. and we don't get involved. So in a way, if you want to hide something, you can hide it in plain sight by labeling it a UFO. You know,
you definitely do that. I mean, one of the best ways to hide any truth with any conspiracy, if you like, as I've said to Adam many times, is hide it in plain sight. It's the last place you look. You know what I mean? It's you expect them to be under lock and key in a big vault somewhere with an armed guard outside 24/7.
Yeah.
And you've got to have a thumbprint, an eye scan of an ass print or something. You know what I mean?
I mean that's. I mean going back. I know it seems like I'm going back to Roswell all the time, but that again, it's. I suppose it's the marker point, isn't it? You know, I mean, you've been saying about an armed guard and stuff like that. You're not allowed within a certain radius of Area 51 unless you're willing to take a bullet.
And there's not like any boundary fences as far as I know.
There's warning signs all around the place. It's a military camp, isn't it? You know, or is it? You know, and then you get to within a certain point, some little dude in the Land Rover will come over. Listen, mate, you need to whop it. You're getting a bit too close here.
Yeah.
Right, fair enough. You either walk on, or you wait till he's turned his back, and you jump on the back of the Land Rover, and you get in there with him, you know. And then you get seated like a colander. So, I mean, moving on from the likes of War of the Worlds and Rendlesham, just for a quick moment, you actually made a Haynes manual.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, so if I was to get this, would this show me where the airbag on off switch is on the spaceship, or you know, how to change the oil and things like that?
You know, full service history, really.
I like
it. Your MOT.
That's good one, that.
I mean, how did that come about, Nigel? That must have been. I mean, did you have to go to them, or did they approach you? It must have been an interesting conversation.
Well, it was funny. I went to a lecture in Plymouth by David Baker, who'd written a Haynes manual on the space shuttle and quite a few space ones. And the next day I said to my wife, it'd be good to have a Haynes manual about UFOs, you know, covering the subject of that. And she said, that sounds boring. So I emailed Haynes, and within 10 minutes I said, that's a brilliant idea, write out a full synopsis. And so signed me up for it. But
that's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. So you wouldn't find this in the likes of Halfords then, would you?
No, I don't think so, no. But places like Waterstones...
Next to the Austin Metro booth.
But it was going to be mainly about how to investigate UFO cases, but in the end it's become more of a kind of survey of a subject. So it looks at the history of sightings from the 19th century onwards, how the United States government and other governments have dealt with the subject, and also Heineck's classification system, from close encounters of the first to the third kind. And then
what is the difference there for people who don't know between a close encounter of the first to the third kind? What's the difference? Is it a distance thing? Is it whether or not you get beamed up?
Well, the close encounters
with your hands.
Great.
That's fantastic. I love that. I'm gonna have to get me one of them.
Well, close encounters of the first kind, I think it's roughly any UFO within 500 feet, roughly. And
that's quite close then.
And then a close encounter of a second time is if the object interacts with the environment. Whether
if it scorches the earth, do you mean?
Yeah, or branches, or causes electrical interference, or causes car stoppage, which is, funnily enough, nowadays, you don't get many car stoppage cases. Years ago, people used to see a light in the sky, and the car would cut out of
that is quite bizarre, considering how technology is advanced, because back then, cars were built to last.
Yeah.
A good couple of decades ago, they were built to last. Now you've got the likes of the Nissan Leaf, which is all electric.
Yeah.
How has that not been stopped?
it's strange really because of more
stars to begin with.
Oh, mate, electric cars, I don't agree with them at all. I really don't.
Just going back to that point, Nigel, do you think that as we've gotten to understand technology in the sense of electromagnetic pulses or possibly frequencies, maybe, and how they can suddenly black out electrics anyway, like the blast of a nuclear blast or something like that.
Yeah.
As we've got to understand that more in the as the technology's grown, do you think that's the reason why them sorts of cases have faded out over time?
I'm not sure. It just seems strange, but one thing we did do was look at like folklore stories, and often the stories like where there's a haunted gate, a horse would always stop at this gateway or would stop at certain places that were haunted. And then I found several stories of people on a bicycle, and suddenly with an battery light, and suddenly the battery light's gone out, and they've seen an odd object or a ghost or something. So even years back, before UFOs even, it was seen to be an association between something strange and it affecting electrical equipment. I don't know whether that's just because perhaps some people perhaps might have seen a UFO and they sort of accidentally stored the car or what. But it just seems odd, really.
A lot of people now, they start ringing up the emergency services, don't they, when there's been like a bit of a, like say a New Year's party or something like that. People are letting off Chinese lanterns where they're just, they just float up into the air.
Funny enough, there was 2 cases this week. I should have gotten ready for the show actually. There was a batch of them in Japan floating past Osaka, Japan, floating past the power station, I think. They looked like Chinese lanterns, the way they were moving dead slow. They were all sort of in the same sort of formation, not scattered formation.
I think that's a spooky thing though. These Chinese lanterns do go in formation, and they're silent and bright. So if you do watch them, I've seen 1 or 2, fly past here. They do look really odd because they're so quiet and moving, like almost intelligently moving, whereas, it's your own mind perceiving that really. And that's what I've done in my manual really. I've got several chapters on how different types of UFO sightings can be explained. So if it's a light, like an orange light, it's explained by sort of like land.
And you see it from quite a distance away as well.
Yeah.
Do you think that's more to do with? Do you think that's more to do with people's suspicious minds now, though?
Possibly, I suppose. I don't know what your take is, Nigel.
Well, I think generally we're used to living indoors, and if we go outside and look at the sky, there's lots of things going on. So we're not quite so well up on what's going off in the sky. And so if you're just walking along and suddenly see these orange lights, it can look really strange. I think also if people video it on their smartphone, often they zoom in and out and move it about and go in and out of focus. So,
it's very unreliable, isn't it? It's a very unreliable method of being able to, even though the cameras now on mobile phones are pretty much better than what you can, a professional photographer's one.
Production of the selfie stick, you still can't keep it still. Selfie stick, stick,
Somebody bought one of them for my daughter.
Oh God.
Yeah, it got binned.
I'm not complaining.
You see all these dickheads driving now that are 100 miles an hour, selfie sticks out the window. What are you playing at, mate? Seriously, put it away.
I'm waiting for a UFO to have a selfie stick poking out my water.
You know what? I think that would be acceptable, provided it was absolute proof beyond certainty.
It'd be like
an alien in some form giving a kiss on a selfie stick.
like the movie Paul or something. You've seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
I'm going to go slightly backwards here now. You think the origins of UFOs? I know, yeah. I like to work in a particular order that's not actually fathomable. The the book that you've done, the origins of UFOs, phantom airships, 1807 to 1917.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about that and how that came about? Because that's quite a distance back.
Yeah, I've put most of this in my book, UFOs of the First World War, and I suppose the first major phantom airship scare occurred in 1896 to 97 in the United States, which is pretty well known, but there was literally hundreds of reports in the newspapers throughout America that period. And people saw lights in the sky and really curious looking sort of phantom airships, airship craft with propellers and rotors and all sorts of improbable things. Just something straight out of Jules Verne, really.
Yeah. And,
there's that implication that perhaps fiction ideas do feed into what people witness or report. And, a lot of these could have been journalistic hoaxes as well. There's no mix of things, just like today's ufology, really. But this only happened for like a period of for about a year, and then it sort of died off. And it wasn't until the sort of 20th century, again, there were more specific sightings of phantom airships. In Britain, we have a 1909 one, early in that year, right up to sort of May time, and where people believe German Zeppelins were coming over and sort of spying out.
I was just going to ask you, did the Germans use them in the First World War? Because that's my general perception, is that they did. Like, I'm not really sure whether they did or they didn't.
Well, I think the thing with the German Zeppelin, they did come over to Britain and do some bombing raids and I think we killed about a couple of thousand people in total. But at the end of the day, they weren't a very effective weapon because they could easily be shot down. We developed like tracer bullets, so once you hit one with a bullet, an incendiary bullet, it would just go up in flames, so it was sort of an easy target. Plus, wind conditions when we're trying to land or take off could often destroy a big airship. But I think
the Hindenburg disaster, for instance.
Yeah, well, they use highly inflammable fuel, so inflammables. So basically, I think the thing with the Zeppelin, though, is that it was a potent symbol of German military power, and it could usurp the British Navy. The old British Empire was built on the strength of our Navy, and suddenly airships or aircraft could come and bring the war to the civilian population for the first time, and the Navy was no good anymore. So I think that's why there are a lot of these airship scares, not just in Britain, but in other parts of the world as well. Yeah. And so my book covers the sort of lead-up ones, scares that were merely sort of anticipating what might happen, and then in the actual First World War, there were lots of sightings in South Africa, Britain, United States, Canada, Australia, and the spring.
In the First World War, did any reported cases of the what they called in the Second World War, the American pilots called them foo fighters? Were there any of that going on in the First World War?
Well, there was something what were called flaming onions, and often pilots saw these spinning balls of light, which they thought were attached to a chain. So they thought they were like almost like cannonballs on chains that were there to smash their wings up. But in the end, I think they thought it was probably a certain form of German artillery that just rapidly fired these sort of incendiary balls. But like Foo Fighters, as far as I know, they never shot an aircraft down with it. And that was the intriguing thing about Foo Fighters. They could follow aircraft and intimidate them, but they never actually did anything useful in terms of military.
Just an intimidation thing, weren't it?
Yeah.
I thought there was
intimidation can be a big tool in a battle, you know. I suppose it's, you watch the boxing and things like that where they have to stare down and everything's all really intense. Every now and again you get one of the other boxers managing to get a sneaky one on the other one's chin.
Yeah.
You know, and it gets split up before it starts. So, you know, he's got a psychological advantage, I suppose, and I think that can work wonders in a lot of different situations.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the British cases is that the War Office collected all the sighting reports from the different police forces throughout Britain, and we got particularly a lot from the Lake District, and we even sent soldiers out to searching the hills looking for an aircraft base that the Germans might be operating from. And so in a way, the British government was probably one of the first to actually properly investigate what we call UFO sightings. You know, obviously in terms of, you know,
it would be us that started it, wouldn't it? It's always us that started.
And there's a very neat little booklet that they produced, something like 5 or 6 pages about how to investigate cases and what might be causing lights. And because another concern was that they thought there might be people signalling to German Zeppelins to show them, you know, to target, because obviously navigation at night was still quite difficult for Zeppelins. So if they had spies with lights guiding them to targets, that was another fear that people had. So often you get people writing to the War Office saying, "Oh, my neighbour's got the lights on."
See, I mean, to do with investigating a UFO, you know, I mean, if you had to narrow it down to top 3 tips to do it, what would you do? Because I know a lot of people, you know, there's a place not far from where me and Steve live called Bidston Hill. And apparently it's meant to be a bit of a hotbed for UFO sightings. And depending on who you listen to, it's what's the word? It's like a window.
Yeah.
There's a period of time that they come in and they come out, and how close they get, I don't know. Because it just depends on who you speak to and what you choose to believe. You know, a lot of people will just say to you, I suppose, look, take a packed lunch, a hot flask, and a tinfoil hat. You know, and you do get those people. You know, so if you had to pop down your own personal top 3, what would they be?
I think several factors. One is duration. If something's very brief, a flash of light, it's more likely to be something like a meteor or a fireball or something. And if it's something that's stationary and in the same position for a long time, even though it might seem bright, it's more likely to be a star or a planet. And but there are other things, like if you go to Warminster, sometimes you see lights that seem to be flying above the hills, but it's actually cars on roads on hills that are further back from what you can actually see. So you kind of imagine a horizon, but these are driving on hills.
It's more down to your own personal perception now, isn't it, from whatever you're looking, whatever angle you're looking up the road at.
I think that's the problem of nailing these things, because if they're a long way away, unless they start coming closer, you know, something like an aircraft, once it starts getting closer, you can hear the engines, and then, you know, you realise it is an aircraft, but from a distance. So I think it's particularly at night time, it's often hard to judge distances. Somebody set off some balloons with lights attached, and even though they put a really small light on the end of the string, it looked really powerful light, because it's so dark where they let it off. You know, it did look pretty powerful. So I think that's the thing. You know, our perceptions can easily be altered by, you know, nighttime. You're more sensitive to anything that goes on as well. You know, it was a sort of more of a fear factor. And if you're looking for UFOs, you're more likely to be on a bit of a hair trigger about sensitivity.
We know what that's like with investigating the paranormal as well.
Oh yeah. But as I was once driving along near Warminster on holiday, and the person driving the car stopped, and we looked out over the fields, and what looked like something out of Close Encounters movie was out in the distance, and it was all lit up. And it was a good 10 minutes before it came closer, and we found out it was a blimp, and you could hear the little engines.
The Goodyear blimp. It's done that to the Goodyear blimp's done that to me.
Yeah. It looks brilliant. And even in the daytime, years ago, where I used to live, we used to have these Vulcan bombers with the swept-back wings, and I saw one once fly overhead, but when it was on the above the horizon flying away, it just looked like a metallic disc. And I thought, if I'd just come out of the house and looked at that, I'd have thought, oh, that's a classic flying saucer. But because I'd seen it flying overhead, I knew it was an aircraft. So, and it's things like, so quite mundane things in the right circumstances can look odd. I think that's why, like Rendlesham, perhaps there was a combination of odd things going on. Once you get a bit of a combination going on, it can sort of lead to all sorts of strange things being reported or perceived. And I think another thing is what I think several people point out: why do UFOs have lights? You know, especially at night time, if they're secretly monitoring the Earth, why have we got all these lights on so that we can see them?
It's so it doesn't take away their insurance. That's the only thing I can put it down to.
That's a good explanation.
Just very quickly, jumping back to the Foo Fighters that you were talking about just before. We've got a question from our chat room. I can't really make out who's that. Who's that from, Aaron? Do you know?
It's from Tom and Jen from Mammoth Mountain.
Right. Okay. Tom Ross.
Yeah.
It's Tom Ross and says about the Foo Fighters. The US has a legend that Churchill submitted a report about them that included photos that were sealed up and not to be reopened until like 100 years later. Is that true?
All right, I've not heard about that. I know Winston Churchill was, interested in UFOs after the war, but even during the war, I think they had some experts who'd analyse the pictures of the V1 and V2 sites, and they'd also investigated the Foo Fighter sightings. And I think I've heard rumours that there was a crashed flying saucer of that period associated with Foo Fighters, but I've never really been able to pin anything down. But it'd be intriguing if we could get out of any evidence that there were these sealed pictures. But I think generally it's been one of these things where Foo Fighters were very intrigued for the authorities at the time, but like I say, because they didn't do anything materially other than sort of perhaps spook the pilots, so they didn't know what to do with it. So
he just sort of shadowed the bombers back to base, didn't he, sort of thing, and flew around the wings and whatnot.
And also shortly after the war, we have the ghost rockets, mainly around Sweden and Norway, where again people saw these sort of projectiles, and most of the time some of them seem to crash into lakes, but when they searched for lakes, they never found anything. Some of them might have been testing of rockets by the Soviets, but there again there were so many sightings, it couldn't possibly be due to that.
Yeah, it was a good question, that's Tom, if you're listening. Jumping onto something totally different, but it still concerns you, Nigel. You were recently asked by the Metro, it was in the Metro newspaper, about the Large Hadron Collider and something to do with the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what that's all about?
Well, we're doing new experiments with the collider, and people have said it will open up a new portal of links to different dimensions even. So I think there again it's people being worried about the latest science really. I think I was probably quite dismissive of it, but I think it just shows that some people have put a lot of mystical importance into this as well.
I wouldn't say you were very dismissive on it. I've actually read the story myself earlier on this week, and I think you actually respectfully basically said, no, it's not, but it's not to be too dramatic about it type of thing. And the way you can make that out, there's your piece there on the picture. And the picture says there, just by the way, no evidence of Satan has been ever been.
You've got to get a disclaimer in there, mate.
But I suppose again, people believe, like, people will, it's 70 years since Hiroshima, and people believe that atomic explosions and rocket launches were also bringing disaster to the earth. That flying saucers have come in to save us because we destroy the universe, and we were coming here not just to protect us, but to protect the universe. So in a way, nothing's particularly new in ufology. It's just a shape of things. But I think with that, that's quite an interesting one, because there's a lot of concern about people, dabbling with science, really. And I suppose that was the thing about flying saucers.
All that sort of paraphernalia aside about the Antichrist and making it a religious thing. We always tend to make it a religious thing, don't we? And I've got nothing against religion. I don't believe in it, but I've got, each to their own.
Now, for me to even suggest that, right, I'm just going to nail my colours straight up here. I think that's ludicrous.
Well, yeah.
There's been so much crap gone on over the centuries to do with, all manner of different religious beliefs, all the different wars from World War One, II, Gulf War, maybe in a few years' time, WWE. If anything was going to summon the Antichrist, surely to God it'd be something else other than some machine that can create a vacuum.
Yeah, I think what my personal take on
horrendous.
My personal take on the hydrogen collider, my concern about it is, I'm all for obviously advancing science, especially when it's regarding maybe space travel or whatever. You know what I mean? Because it's there to be looked at. Let's be honest. But with something like that, they literally don't know what's going to happen whenever they're doing it. And that's a concern for me, because you don't know. I mean, there's been all kinds of stories whereby it could create a miniature black hole at the centre of Switzerland. You know what I mean? I personally thought there was already one there with all the banking situation, but that's another story. You know what I mean? But that's my personal concern about it.
I think it's a Toblerone factory in disguise. But I think it's interesting though that ufology has got into more about having portals, and they used to be called window areas and things. And
they're not wormholes and stargates now, aren't they? I've noticed.
Yeah,
a lot of talk about that. Hollywood gets everywhere, doesn't it, I suppose?
Yeah. Well, it's quite interesting though, because ufology influences Hollywood, and then it feeds back into ufology. So there is a kind of interaction. Like things like Men in Black were only fairly known in small circles, but now with the Will Smith movies, Men in Black are a well-known subject. And it's same with Independence Day. I'd sort of
I was going to make a bit of a reference to Independence Day. I can assure you it's not a Mickey take in any way, shape, or form. But I mean, for me, that's probably one of the better films that I've seen to do with alien invasion.
Yeah, it was the first of its kind.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best one I've seen, if I'm totally honest. Don't get me wrong, Men in Black was good. It was, it was there to make you laugh, and it did. You had Will Smith, the funny man. You had Tommy Lee Jones, who was just some kick-ass old dude, But I mean, going back more to the Independence Day film, in my mind, I do think if there was ever going to be an alien invasion, that's how it'd happen. For me, personally, that's how I think it'd happen.
You wouldn't expect it.
It would the backstory of War of the Worlds, know.
The thing I like about Independence Day for me is that back then, they never really. Back then, they still wouldn't admit that Area 51 existed. But in the film, he kind of touched on it, like, trust me, it's there, sort of thing. It's not on the map, but it is there. And that was the first sort of sign from Hollywood, if you like, that, yeah, listen, we know there's a base there, we've seen it, do you know what I mean? All this talk, but he keeps denying it, but it's there, we've seen it. And then after that, it's just, it just kind of, oh yeah, it's there, but we're not going to make it official, you know what I mean?
It's a 20-year-old film, that now, isn't it? You know,
it is, yeah.
And that's scary to think, you know, because I remember watching that when it first came out, and it's like, is it really that old? Oh God, what's happened here? You know, but personally, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think there's going to be millions of little spaceships flying around the place, you know, but I do think
batteries not included could happen, lad.
It could. It could. Do you know what I mean? It could just be one big meaty thing up in the air and it just kills everything.
Well, the way the Avengers and the Marvel stories going lately, you know what I mean? That looks like that's what's going to happen. Everyone's going to turn into the Hulk and go.
Mate, I was close to it a couple of hours ago. Don't worry about that. But no, I do think it's going to be, you know, if not in our lifetime, when something about it does come out, because eventually it is going to come out that there's something knocking around that's not human. Yeah. You know, it may be humanoid, but it's not.
I think so. I mean, the final question for yourself, Nigel, because it's just gone 11. I know you've got to get off pretty soon. Yeah. As regards to what Adam's just been touching on there about finding life and all that, do you think that NASA maybe already know, and they're just reluctant to say so unless they're getting concrete evidence, or they're just waiting for the right time to release it? Do you know what I mean? Did he already know that there's life on other planets?
If they do, why do you think they're holding it back?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think at least scientists are willing to think there is life elsewhere now, whereas I think it was a kind of taboo subject, and even Stephen Hawking's now back in this big project to search for life out there. But it begs a question, you know, if it's alien, how would we interact and know about it? You know, there's species on our own planet that we can't interact or understand. So actually interacting and understanding with aliens, plus you think how technology changes in 10 years, imagine what technology changes in 1,000 years. It's incredible. And also, we think we're intelligent, but then they could be like 10 times more intelligent than us. So, you know, with that sort of, you know.
Touching on the interaction part, I mean, you know, they've always said that extraterrestrial beings are like uber intelligent, whereas us, you know, we're nothing in comparison.
Yeah.
So, you know, beings with such superior knowledge and things like that, you know, they'd have to seriously dumb themselves down quite a lot to come and actually say, listen, you know, here we are, you know. Hopefully, if it does come out within the next few years, we might even be able to get one on here and just say to them, look, what's with the big game of hide and seek?
They may have already been here once before. I mean, you were talking about pyramids and stuff, weren't you, earlier on?
Well,
and stuff like that, so.
The Great Pyramid, is it Giza?
Giza.
You know, it's meant to be absolutely bang in the middle of the earth, yeah? And some of them stones weigh between 2 to 50 tons. How do people back then move that kind of weight? 2 ton. That's hard enough to move on your own. You know, it might be easy with a group of 10 people. Bleeding hell, you're going to get it all the way up to the top of that pyramid, bang it in the middle. You know, and then you've got the 50 stone ones that's holding everything in place, which might add the cornerstones are also a ball and socket joint.
Oh, right.
If that information's correct that I've seen, it's also a ball and socket, you know, like your hip or your shoulder. So it allows for the flexibility of movement. But at one point, he said that the tip of the Great Pyramid was absolutely in line with the North Pole.
That's how I've heard that myself.
It's dead centre.
I think there's some NASA.
Do you think that was like ancient aliens that have popped down and just planted this in and said, listen, we're going to screw with your minds for the rest of days, and we're going to sit back laughing at you while you try and figure out how this happens.
Like giving a 2-year-old a Rubik's Cube.
It is, you know, some form of child prodigy, you know, but
I think that was a good
it's
thing
a head
about,
scratcher for me.
yeah, 2001: A Space Odyssey, where they discovered a monolith on the moon, which triggered the message to send them to Jupiter and go through a Stargate. So in a way, yeah, it's quite an interesting take on the astronauts, ancient astronauts.
When you actually think about that, that theme's been very, very common through most Hollywood movies. You mentioned Stargate. But there was a film called Stargate. It was a good film. And,
that was Kurt Russell, wasn't
it? Yes, it was. Yeah. And actually based on ancient Egyptians as well. Ancient Egyptians. What was I saying? The moon-based sort of thing. There's been a few films like Apollo 18. I don't know whether you've seen that.
Oh yeah.
Apollo 18 kind of touched on something being on the moon, and this was the reason why we never went back. And recently, just this week, in fact, I was looking at a few stories whereby there was supposed to have been secret Apollo missions. I don't know whether it's true or not. I haven't actually looked into it. You can only stopped at 17. But apparently 18, 19 and 20 secretly happened. We had like a co-joint venture with the USSR at the time. Which, of course, at the time was unthinkable because the Cold War was happening. So I suppose, like you were saying earlier on, in plain sight is where it could be hidden if they did do it.
There's no set of rumours that there's been moon bases and even Mars bases set up.
I still think Optimus Prime's up there at the minute, you know what I mean?
Yeah, futuristic robots that turn into cars. Give me one of those. I mean, I'm going to ask you one last question, Nigel, before we let you go. You know, you did say that you've got an early dart tomorrow because you know you're off to Barcelona. You lucky person. It's the Mars rovers. They've picked up some pictures and things like that of like what used to be what used to possibly be they found water, they found gas, you know, and it's a livable planet. And then on the other side of things, they've also found allegedly found fossilized lizards, houses, you know, half-built houses or something like that. You know, so you could easily house a community up there with. I think they found a village, or so. I might have that bit wrong, so don't think that.
I think nearly every week now, there's people finding images taken by curiosity on Mars that seem to. You know, it's ranged from. I think there's been sort of like lizards and tools and quite a lot of other sort of features of buildings, but some of it's probably light and shadow. I think there's even been a kind of one or two sort of streaks of light, which people said are UFOs. But I think most of these pictures, it depends on scale really, because some of them people have said they've seen pyramids, but they're only like 6 inches high really, and things like that. So I think it's very difficult to judge some of it.
I think I actually remember seeing a story about 2 months ago now, or something like that. Like exactly what you said there, Nigel. It was like an ancient pyramid found on Mars by Curiosity Mars rover, or what it was called. And it was literally the tip of, you imagine the Giza pyramid that was buried all the way up to the very tip, and it was literally about that much sticking out the sand. You're thinking, well, if it's going to be the size of the one in Egypt, how far? You know what I mean? Ridiculous.
So I mean, do you think it's a possibility that, you know, obviously if aliens don't show themselves here, I mean, you've got the likes of Richard Branson saying, "Oh yeah, we'll fly you to the moon for a few £100,000 per trip." You're okay. You know, as soon as I earn money like David Beckham, I'll be first on that rocket. But do you think it's going to be more? The plans are being made now, I think, aren't they, to start civilization on, like, say, the moon.
You want to tackle colonies on the moon, on Mars.
Yeah, I mean, do you think if that does come to fruition, that it's going to be more chance of alien races showing themselves to us? Because, I mean, it's not looking overly likely that it's going to happen here, although it'd be great if it did.
I
just think there's too much going on here.
Yeah, I think Mars would be brilliant if it could find even microbial life. But there seems to have been water on Mars at some stage in its evolution, because there's lots of channels and things. And it would be great if you could even find fossilized remains of something like very simple sea creatures. There might have even been, I don't know whether Mars had a habitable area long enough for such things to evolve, but it'd be great if something like that could be found. I think the frustrating thing is, like, using that robot, you can never quite. You're limited by the instruments on the robot, really, so it's very difficult to actually know. I think unless people
and as we've seen in the past as well, on a I know when we sent our rover up there, I can't remember what that was called now. It landed in a sort of a crater or a dip or something like that, and it was solar powered, and it actually landed on the shadow part of the crater, and we couldn't use it, so it was pointless. We sent it all the way there. It took it 3 months to get there or something stupid, and it landed in a hole. Typical British, I suppose. I don't know. It was one of them.
But I think the thing with Mars, though, it's always been regarded as somewhere where life has existed. That's the other thing, like with the War of the Worlds scare with Orson Welles, people were willing to believe that intelligent life had come from Mars and was plundering the landscape. And that goes back to H.G. Wells' original book, and Percival Lovell, and all this thing about canals on the surface of Mars. And there's always seemed to be these seasonal changes on the North and South Poles, which people thought was perhaps agriculture being supplied by the canals, to water the crops, So
to touch on that, to do with the likes of canals and possibilities of lakes being on Mars. Essentially, Mars is a rock. It's mineral and things like that, and isn't that like a natural producer of water anyway? So surely there would be some trace of it there. Because you can get rain on Mars. I've seen the pictures. Whether they were right or wrong, I don't know. But you can still get rain on Mars, and as you do here. So
I think we've got a lot of. I reckon there might be a lot of water or frozen water underneath the poles, and that would be something that would be able to extract. There's also seems to have been a lot of volcanic activity on Mars, and I think because there's like all these channels, underground channels created by lava or whatever, I reckon those could be ideal to use as underground bases, because the surface is quite inhospitable for human life. So I think Mars, it's just, there could be so much there to find, really. You don't know what's, we're discovering lots of things just with a curiosity. So to have a man.
Do you think that it'd be more beneficial if we went back to the moon and done what we're doing on Mars, but on the moon? As regards to finding microbial life form minerals and stuff like that first, and then maybe establish some sort of space moon base there where we can launch from rather than doing it here, because it'll be a lot easier and I suppose a lot cost effective if you could launch from the moon to Mars.
Well, it does work out how you get the fuel up there, though, Steve. You know what I mean? You'd have to have some slug on that rocket to get a tank of fuel up there.
That's what I mean. You're talking like, if you think back to like Challenger and stuff like that, what we know of getting up there, it takes a hell of a lot of thrust to escape our atmosphere. But if you're actually already on the moon to begin with, and you're launching from there, obviously getting the stuff there is going to be a bit of a hike. But once it's there,
but it's to be cost effective, though, mate. I think you'd still be putting a massive hole in your own pocket. You've got to get the not only have you got to get the fuel there, you're also going to be using 2 or 3 times that amount, because if you've got the rocket that's already going through thousands and thousands of gallons of fuel just to move, let alone start shooting through atmospheres, mate, you've got to think about what it's carrying also. There's no way you can get a hose long enough to go directly from from BP straight up to the moon.
Not yet, you can't.
It's amazing. It's amazing though that we managed to get to the moon in about 10 years of intense effort, and then in the last 40 years we've never been back. And
that's exactly my point. It's just.
But did they go in the first place? That's the massive question, isn't it? You know, all right, this is the conspiracy corner for Beyond the White Noise, you know, and bringing up the moon landing.
This is what we're all about, isn't it? Well said, lad.
You know, it's a lot of people say, yeah, they did, and then a lot of people are opposed to it because there were shadows and the flag was flying and all kinds of different things.
My personal opinion on my take on this before we ask Nigel's take on it is, at the time when you went with Neil Armstrong and stuff like that, that particular landing I don't think was real. I think they staged that for beneficial reasons, to try and beat the Russians possibly, and because they were under so much pressure after the other missions before it failed. So some of them drastically. One crew actually burnt alive inside the pod. Am I right? Yeah, I think it was like Apollo, like 4 or 5 or something like that. You couldn't get them out.
Wasn't it 13?
No, that was
the film, wasn't it? Sorry, yeah.
That stuff. But I think it was Apollo 11 that actually landed on the moon, or suppose which allegedly landed on the moon. Yeah. I think that particular one, my personal opinion anyway, is that they never. I think since then they did. Yeah. But after that, the pressure's off. You know what I mean? The pressure's off then, because they've already done it. So, but that's my own personal take on it. I mean, if they proved that they've been there, You know, I've got no problem with that.
Okay, so I'm gonna. I promise you now, Nigel. This is the last one. I only want one sentence from you.
Okay.
As a sign off for us.
Okay.
Alien visitation. Is it going to happen in our lifetime? Yes or no? If you choose yes, what do you think the time period will be?
I'd say no, because we always think there's something just on the horizon. But I think it'd be great if it did happen. But I think it's just like people have always said, next year we'll know everything, and it's always like one step further.
Procrastination, isn't it? You know, it's like procrastination.
It's all right if
I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah. If you're younger, you think, 50 years time, but I think I'm not willing to wait another 50 years for this.
I don't think my body's going to last another 50 years, mate, I'll be honest with you. If I see 70, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
What about you, Steve? Yeah or nay?
I tend to agree with Nigel on the basis that unless they've already known about it, even if it's microbial stuff, and just haven't released the information yet, that's always a possibility. But in my lifetime, like Nigel said, I hope in our lifetime, I hope they do. I hope they make it open to the public as well and let us all know and let us all share in it, because I think it'll be amazing. It will. You know what I mean? It'll advance our civilization as a planet and our species, tenfold, I think.
Well, I'm going to stick my neck right out here, and I'm going to say yeah.
Ooh.
I'm going to say yeah, simply because I think there's too much going on. Well, for the same reason that I don't think they will as well. There's too much going on, and eventually King Alien's going to get fed up with it and say, right, listen, something's going to have to be done here.
Yeah.
Get, Bob, Eddie, Dave, get down there, go and pay them a visit, let them know we're here, we're watching, and if they don't pack it in, they're going to get a rocket to them. And then possibly, with any luck, we might get one on the show.
With a bit of luck. I don't think I can speak clandestine alien, though.
You don't have to. You don't have to, mate. We're English.
We'll have to use Wingdings or something like that for English.
Everyone speaks English. It's fine. Yeah. Right, Nigel, we're going to let you go now, mate. We've got 20 minutes over than what we agreed.
Yes,
we truly do appreciate you coming on the show for us tonight. It's been a really interesting show. And I've got to be honest, I panicked a bit tonight because this is my first Conspiracy Corner show.
Yes, he was very jumpy.
Yeah, I've been broken in gently, I think, and
careful.
in a very informative and interesting way. There's some definite good points that's been put across from yourself and from Steve also. Is there anything that you want to put out there in the public? to do with the book, a website or anything like that where people can go and view the things that you've done?
All right. Well, I've done Facebook pages for the UFO Investigations Manual and for the UFOs of the First World War. And so I've posted bits of information relating to those books. And you can always get them on Amazon or most of the other sort of websites that sell books, basically. So it's quite easy if you just Google the titles, you can find the book somewhere.
But you can even Google your name and
yeah. And
okay,
also with the UFOs of the First World War, it's you can get a Kindle edition as well. So if you're super eager, you can get it just downloaded straight away. But it's quite handy as a paperback because it's got so much information that's just been collected over like a period of the last 20, 30 years. So, for the sake of like a tenner, you're getting sort of lots of information that you can't even find online, which is really good because a lot of books are based on stuff you can find online, but with this,
a lot of stuff is Roswell and beyond.
Yeah, this is. I think the stuff you've done, Nigel, is a lot more variant, isn't it? It's it's a lot of things to do with ufology and things like that.
Yeah.
I think for an enthusiast, it's a break from the norm. Actually, not reading Roswell every 5 minutes or anything.
It's a nice little guide to what happened before that period, really.
Definitely.
And
so got historical value there as well, hasn't it?
So I'm quite pleased with that book. So, but I've got some more ebooks coming up in future about Foo Fighters and the Nazi UFO connection and different things like that.
Awesome.
I think they're going to be really.
Whatever it was called.
Well, once you've got the proper release dates and things like that, drop us a line.
Yeah, that'd be good.
We'll plug them on the show for you.
Great. That'd be great.
Maybe get you back on in the future as well to help you also, excuse me, to launch them maybe.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. And also, if you hear anything really juicy to do with any of the topics that we've covered tonight, look straight on to us and we'll have you back on there and then, pal.
Perhaps you could have Satan on as well as an alien.
That'd be a turn up for the books, wouldn't it? Have to be giving them a
I think I'll be out that day.
That's brilliant, Nigel. Once again, thanks very much.
All right, bye. Cheers. Thanks a lot.
And take care on holiday as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah.
Take care now. Thank you. So, Steve, I think that was
very bad.
It was very informative, mate, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of information there that I didn't know myself, and which is very surprising. Do you know what I mean? Especially where UFOs are concerned. And obviously, you met my dad earlier. That's where I get my information from.
Your dad's another one, isn't he? He's like a walking encyclopedia.
That's what it says.
He's just
amazing.
Brain box, he's a legend, is George, isn't he?
He is.
Don't tell him I said that, though. He might start being nice to me. So I think that's a topic, though, that can go on for quite some time.
Definitely. I mean, it's
we've had Tom and Jenny there in the chat room there, and they've put a few good points across themselves.
If Tom's listening, that was a great question. What Tom posted about Churchill. I do actually remember something about Churchill locking files away for 100 years. I'm almost certain I've seen a documentary on it.
That wouldn't surprise me, to be honest, mate, because again, it depends on who you speak to, who you listen to, and what you believe.
Yeah.
There's all manner of different things floating around that people will take for granted that'll completely bypass other people and it'll completely intrigue and enthrall others. So. But that's what I think. That's what this show's about, isn't it? It's a little bit different towards things like that, where we
it's a break from the norm. And I mean, we've got a few different varying cases coming up, haven't we? As you know.
Yeah. One's quite controversial.
One's quite controversial. We're not going to get too much.
Mean it to be controversial either. I think that's something that we'll have to put across. Is that it may seem controversial, but that's not the intention.
It's But we'll look out for any releases on that towards the end of this month, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But as regards to the UFO stuff, there's been quite a lot of UFO news this week. There was Rendlesham have got apparently more evidence. Apparently, they've now got radar crews that were from the bases. Have now given witness testimony because they've now retired. They didn't want to give it while they were still in active service, but they've now retired, and apparently they've now come forward as well. But I'm a bit dubious about that. You know what I mean? I don't know what yourself like.
See, I mean, I've spoken to you off air before today, haven't I, to do with things like this where people come out and say, "Oh yeah, I seen this, that, and the other. I worked here at that point, and this, that, and the..." You know. So okay, you were a flight general in the US Air Force at that point in time, or you were the colonel over this side of the pond, and you were privy to everything that happened at Rendlesham.
Yeah.
Why say about it now? Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I look at
the Official Secrets Act, don't they? You know what I mean? But you don't.
I mean,
you're meant to be bound to that for life.
I've got a friend, Gary Fisher from the States, who's in the US Air Force. He can tell you a lot about that. He knows all of that from the US Air Force side of things. But for the people who were on the base at the time, I think one of them was a tech sergeant and had to retire. So which is the same rank as what Gary is, I think. Remember rightly?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If they came forward at the time and they were like the base commander and the base commander and the squadron leader, I think, or something like that, with a couple of their soldiers as well. Okay. So why these radar crews couldn't come forward at the same time? Because they've got pretty good backing if you think about it. Why they couldn't come forward then? And that's the problem I've got with it. Why would they have to wait until retirement or until they leave the service or whatever?
Well, I think it's a lot to do with it's classed as gross misconduct, I think, isn't it? Because
it is. I
with things like that, you've got to sign the Official Secrets Act, and I think you're bound to that. It's either for a long period of time or for life.
You've got
so obviously, if you're serving at that time, you're risking not only your job, your career, but also possibly your nest egg for when you've retired. You've got a pen, and if you've been in there for years, you've got a nice big pension. That's just
exactly the same thing. Yeah, commercial airline pilots go through exactly the same thing. I mean, there's a famous one whereby it's a Japanese airline pilot. I think it was going from a flight over Canada or from Canada to Japan or the other way around. I can't remember. And it's a famous case. It was a well documented case. It was caught on radar. From several different ground radars, where they pick up the transponder signals on the flight paths. The plane's own radar, they've visually seen it by himself, his co-pilots, and a couple of the passengers and crew, also seeing it out the plane, the windows of the plane. And it's the most documented commercial airline UFO case I think there's ever been. And he didn't want to come forward because he would have lost his job. I think it's the FAA, is it, or something? I can't remember.
Sort of the flight authorities,
They have obviously got a very strict policy in regards to what things like that. But they just need to relax it a little bit. I mean, just don't be so harsh on them. Let's be honest. If it was another country about to invade another country and this commercial pilot's seen it,
it's a good heads up, isn't it?
It's a good heads up, isn't it? That's the way I'd look at it. Do you know what I mean? But I can understand them being reluctant to talk about it because they're over a battle.
Fear of ridicule, isn't it, more than anything?
Yeah, exactly. Anyone like that,
I think the main question, though, that needs asking is why have a blanket over it? Do you know what I mean? Whereas, I mean, you've just been saying to do with the Japanese airline pilot could have lost his job if he'd have spoke out about it.
Yeah.
Why? What is it to do with them? If he's saying, "Listen, this is what I seen,"
I don't know.
What harm does it do to that airline?
I suppose the way they'd look at it is well, it's the old cliche, isn't it? I mean, if you take him out the plane for argument's sake, that the pilot who was seeing it, and he's seen that while he was walking his dog, to the shops or whatever, and he caused such a fuss. He could be deemed crazy, a bit of a loony bin. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, so again, it goes back to Independence Day, then, doesn't it? Where the fella, he's getting lambasted, isn't he? Everywhere saying, "Oh no, he's nuts, he's crazy." Yeah, the crop dust, the fella, the dad, and then It's like, no, this really happened. Nobody ever believes him. A few years later, alien invasion.
There's the alien abduction side of stuff, well, UFO abduction, alien abduction is a totally different ball game. I mean, I used to try and include them hand in hand, but I've learned over time you can't. No. It's a totally different ball game. You're talking on a psychological basis, a personal basis, definitely. And there's so many different. There's obviously the famous case of Travis Walton, for instance.
Yeah.
It's 40 years this November that happened to him. I know he was doing another documentary, I think, around the time later on in the year, in November. He's probably the most famous one. He disappeared for 5 days. To himself, he was only gone about an hour, but he was actually away for 5 days.
Yeah, a lot of abduction cases that you read about, whether it's actually in the media or, in a book, it always seems to revolve around the time where it's like, well, no, I was only up there 20 minutes. What do you mean?
Exactly, yeah. It's
and weird, they've been gone for a year, and it's like, why was it only feeling like 20 minutes when realistically had been gone a year? And why did I not sleep during that time?
It's one of the many factors that happens with these abduction cases, which we'll probably cover in a later show, because there is literally thousands of them now. You've got the experiments that they get done on them, the different implants that sometimes the doctor who's recently just passed away, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But he was actually filmed on a UFO documentary, taking a small black metallic, looked like a little transistor. You can actually have transistor radio, the little sort of one of them, out the back of someone's ankle, I think, or something like that. Remember rightly, he actually filmed them doing it.
Yeah. Tom and Jenna just wrote on the chat room, mate. Sorry. Oh, they've now left the chat room. The governor of Arizona saw the Phoenix craft. He was an ex-pilot.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was going to bring that up before.
That's Phoenix a guy lights. There who's got quite a bit of pull then in Arizona.
Yeah, well, you see, where he made the mistake is that when it first happened, there was such a panic in Arizona, right across the state. There was thousands of people that saw this triangular shaped craft that never made any noise, massive craft, just slowly just gliding over towards from North Arizona down towards Phoenix and then southwards, that way.
Yeah.
And to try and not dumb it down, but to try and ease the panic or whatever it was. His words in the documentary. I know what I saw. It's on UFO TV. If you get a chance to watch it, have a look. It's all about the Phoenix lights. He says on that he basically just tried to calm it down a bit and not take it too seriously. But he did reassure everyone that he did try and ask the right questions and find out what was going on, but no one knew what it was. He phoned his general that he was obviously working with being in office. He's seen it himself, obviously. But the one mistake he made was bringing that guy in dressed up as a grey alien, and it really pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah, I can imagine.
He regrets it now, you can tell, but and all credit to him for saying so, do you know what I mean?
But yeah, it takes a big guy to say, look, I cocked it
I'll
up.
be honest, I thought at first it was the authorities trying to cover things up again and just make everyone look like a fucking idiot. Do you know what I mean? Sorry for being swearing, but that's what my first take was on it. But as it turned out, it was just an honest mistake. He was just trying to play it down because there was a mass panic. No one knew what was going on. There was all kinds of people phoning his office and asking him and writing in. The police were getting switchboard calls right across the state. You know what I mean? Yeah, and that was only back in the 90s or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it wasn't that long ago.
There's a lot of sightings there, that can be explained away.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's unfair for the people that have seen a genuine UFO in their eyes to be ridiculed in that way. And I don't know
that's the impression
through fear of the unknown or ridiculed because they're just ignorant.
Well, it could be a mix of both, couldn't it? You're bound to get ignorant people anyway.
I mean, ignorance isn't, I've said this twice today, mate, ignorance is not always bliss.
No, in my eyes, it never is.
And I think you've got to keep an open mind to anything like this. Obviously, you're going to get your cranks. you're going to get your dickheads, you know. That's fine. You get them in every walk of life, in every field, you know.
The perfect example is we jump to cryptozoology and the Bigfoot phenomenon. You always get someone wanting to get dressed up in a ghillie suit just to run across a road in the middle of nowhere in the back roads of northern American states or something like that.
Yeah.
One of them recently got run over by a state patrol car and killed because he was doing a Bigfoot hoax, the friggin' idiot. It's his own fault, you know what I mean? It's stupid.
Yeah.
You know, if them creatures do exist, they're not doing anyone any favours.
Do you know what the stupid bit about that is? Right?
Excuse me, yeah.
It's not the fact that he's decided to hoax people. Yeah? The copper who's hit him, his life's ruined.
Yeah.
So it's not stupid. It's just fucking selfish. And, you know, people like that, all right, yeah, he's probably done it because he was half cut. Do you know what I mean? Or he just wanted that little bit of
He was on his own as well, apparently, which is a bit weird. So I don't know. It wasn't like he was with a gang of mates, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like, I mean, some of the things that have been seen on Saddleworth Moor over here, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
You've got the panther.
Dr. Bear, yeah,
just a random panther, you know, it's just been dropped out of the sky. You know, it's probably just a dog, really big dog.
But did you actually think that there's I think it's on is it Saddleworth Moor? That's where it started. Yeah. Did you actually one of them?
The black cats.
Yeah, it's not probably panther's probably a bit too big for it, but panther-like definitely, but a little bit smaller, I think. But you do reckon there is some big,
like a lynx.
Yeah, kind of like a lynx, size of a small dog, but it's a cat. If that makes any sense.
A cat dog.
Cat dog, yeah, cog. But I just think
you're struggling to get a grip of that, aren't you? The cat dog.
The cat dog, yeah.
It's like the human centipede, but with cats and dogs.
Oh, don't even start that. I watched a weird film the other day on sci-fi. What is it with sci-fi and weird films? I don't know. It's just amazing.
I just want to know what kind of person would sew someone's face to another person's ass. It's unhygienic for a start. But you know, I think
you were talking shit.
I tell you, mate, I'd hate to be the one at the end.
I know.
Put me at the front. God. I'm all right. Don't put me at the back. For the love of God, please don't do that.
Especially after the curry.
Oh dear me, mate. Anyway. No, things are taking a bizarre turn here. Yeah. But you know, I think we should wrap up. But
just before we go, just to remind people that this Sunday we have Darryl Berry on, Darryl Berry Jr. In fact, but you can see that there,
yeah.
He has written his first book called Travel Far. It's all about out-of-body experiences, OBEs, and interterrestrial travel and stuff like that as well.
Does it cover lucid dreaming, do you know?
Possibly, yes. I have read some of the book. It's actually a very good book.
I know the last paranormal show I was on with Kurt and Mo.
Yeah.
It was, I think, during the Skull Experiments show.
That's correct, yes. Yeah.
I made reference to lucid dreaming.
Well, this is right up your alley, then, mate. If that's right, this is right up your alley.
Yeah.
You've seen the bio that they said. He's a fantastic fella.
Yeah, he comes across as a nice bloke as well. Yeah,
definitely. He's been in constant contact with us now for 2 months ahead of this. He's really looking forward to it. Yeah, booked the time off work and everything.
What a guy.
You know what I mean? You see, and he's thankfully, very gratefully gave us a book that we can give away in a competition. But what you need to do is on our Facebook page, the Beyond the White Noise Paranormal Videocast, on the events, if you click on his event, which is for this, is it the 6th, the 9th this Sunday?
It is the 9th, I think, mate.
Yes, it's got the date there in front of me.
Yeah, the 9th of August.
On the 9th, which is the Sunday, is the day of his when he's on the show. The competition runs until Saturday. Anyone who joins the guest list up until Saturday will be eligible to be in a prize draw to win a free copy.
Saturday's a bit mean, Steve. Come on, lad.
Well, yeah, I've got to write them all down, stuff. You know what I mean?
That's all right.
You know what I mean?
It was exactly. It's about time he done something.
Morris.
Yeah.
Do something.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's true enough. Yeah, it's asking a bit much, really.
I'm all.
So what if we say by midday Sunday instead?
Yeah, well, I was thinking of extending it to midday Sunday because we had a big influx of people who've actually joined. It shot up for a good 10 people, I think, today.
So that's midday Sunday in the UK.
Yes.
About 7 a.m.
Yeah.
in the US.
Yeah, anyone after that won't be eligible, I'm afraid, because we've got to be able to get them all in, and then we're going to do the draw on the Monday morning, 10 o'clock UK time, and we'll announce it. We'll announce it on our Facebook pages then. But it was a big thanks for Daryl for donating a copy of his book for doing so.
Yeah,
fantastic.
You know, when I was at yours the other day, I had a quick butchers at the synopsis at the back of the book. Unfortunately, because you've still got it, I haven't actually been able to read it. Although it's definitely on my my to-do list. Because as you said,
once I'm done with it, mate, you can borrow it. It's as long as you give me it back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll give it back.
From the first few pages that I've read, it gripped me straight away. It's not too complicated. It's very easily explained. You know, very easy to follow. Even if you don't really read any of this stuff, you pick it up like that. You know what I mean?
Do you know what though, mate? I think to do with the topics that Daryl covers, you know, I think you should at least have a look into it because again, it's such a different side of the paranormal, and it can really link into all different things. And for people who are watching now or who are going to be, who've got watch the podcast, the vidcast on YouTube, you know, lucid dreaming, if you're not aware of what it is, in a nutshell, it's you being able to control your dream from a certain point. You know, and I've managed to do that myself a couple of times. It was a good few years ago at the time, but my sleeping pattern was up the wall. The dreams I was having were very, very, very vivid. Some of them were quite scary. And you know, it takes a special type of person to be able to lucid dream constantly, and I've done it twice in my whole life. So I'm not claiming to be no special person. I think it was just possibly a bit of luck. But there's people who do it every single night.
In the fact that at the time you were obviously a bit, you were stressed, obviously with the way things were. You said you sleep patterns up the wall. You know, my mind is at the moment.
Oh, mate. It got to the point where I was waking up about 15 to 20 times a night.
Yeah.
And it wasn't for massive periods of time. It was for seconds, but it completely destroys you.
Yeah.
And once that's been going on for between a year and 2 years,
you're
no longer yourself. Your body's a complete and utter wreck.
You
know, and the only thing you've got left is that last little marble rolling around in the back of your mind before it actually gets its berry, its dark glasses, and fucks off on the ferry to Belgium. You know, it's the last throw of the dice, mate, where you're about that far away from actually losing your mind. It's bordering on insomnia.
Well, I think I'm actually past insomnia now, if that's possible.
Insomnia gets Steve Floyd, doesn't it?
Insomnia, by a group called Faithless. I don't bloody think so. You know what I mean?
When was the last time you tore off tights with your teeth?
It's
a while, mate, isn't it?
I don't even remember what tights look like anymore.
You have to start wearing them again, mate. But
on my face.
See you at Barclays in the morning. But, once again,
just for the record, if any Barclays get screwed in the morning, it's not us.
Gonna have to sleep with this recording now. Once again, a big thanks to our guest tonight, Nigel Watson. He was absolutely spot on, and mate, I'm definitely getting me a copy of that Haynes manual.
It's great, isn't it?
That is fucking brilliant. When I seen the picture, I was like, no, surely not.
Hello.
You know, where did you find that? Is it in between the Mark III Escort and the new Galaxy Gaia or whatever? You know,
like yourself, I kept picturing it in Halfords on the rack. You know, with all the
yeah.
You know,
Imagine walking in. No, listen, mate, I'm after a Haynes manual. Oh yeah, what car's it for? It ain't for a car. Motorbike? No.
It's me from a plasma propulsion spaceship.
But I think he'd cost you one, wouldn't he, and throw it out the door. But no, I think that is one of the most unique books you're ever gonna find. It's you know, Haynes are quite a big company over here for the reason of the car manuals and stuff like that. You know,
established.
Oh, massively so, yeah. And the back catalogue's enormous.
Yeah.
You know, and for them to one agree with it is good in itself, but for them to pretty much snap Nigel's hand off to do it.
Yeah, they did. He said he wasn't expecting any 2 weeks. He wasn't even expecting an answer, I don't think. But if he was going to get one, maybe
you
say
wouldn't, though,
no.
Would you?
Maybe 2 weeks, something like that. Within 10 minutes, they emailed them back.
Yeah, 10 minutes, mate, for a massive company like that. Bloody hell, it takes you longer to text me back.
That was, well, yeah, I know, but my phone's dead, look, my phone's dying, look, that's my phone.
That's not an excuse.
If anyone out there's got a new phone,
oh,
preferably
mate.
one
Dude,
that
put that away, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing.
I'd rather have a Nokia.
I'd rather just have a brick.
No, I'd just throw that away.
But anyway. Break. But yeah, thanks to Nigel for coming on. Steve, thanks to you,
pleasure,
mate, for
the next time we're going to be back on again in 2 weeks. You're going to be on this one with me in 2 weeks.
I really enjoyed. Oh, Ed's back on, is he? Yeah. Fantastic. I like it.
Stuff. I must admit, I thought he was only predominantly paranormal. So it'll be interesting to see.
He wears a few hats. He wears a few hats, mate. The paranormal chat we had with him was really, really good. You know, he gave me a couple of tips, and you know, it doesn't matter how long you've been investigating for, whether you're a veteran, 30 years plus, or whether you're just starting out. There's always ways you can improve.
Yeah.
Always improve. You can always improve your methods. Don't get complacent. You know, Ed's mentioned a couple of things that he does while he's out on investigation, and you're sitting there and you think, why the bloody hell haven't I tried that?
Something so simple as well.
Yeah, honestly, mate, it was ridiculous, and I kicked myself for days afterwards. But now Ed Bogrowski, he's a good guy. The interview, as I say, the paranormal interview was spot on. Yeah. And if that's the yardstick that we're going by, this conspiracy one, he's gonna knock it out the park.
I'm gonna get in contact him within the next couple of days and try and see what sort of topics if we pick many.
We can always throw a surprise one at him as well.
Yeah.
Try and catch him off guard, because this guy, honestly, Steve, this guy's on his toes all the time. You know, he knows exactly what he's talking about all the time. So I'm going to try and find me a topic that's deliberately going to catch him off guard. So Ed, watching this, mate, just be warm, pal. I'm going to catch you off guard.
2 weeks.
At least I'm going to try. Yeah, 2 weeks to bone up on everything that you can possibly think of, mate. And I do it with love. I really do. But yeah, mate, thanks. I really enjoyed tonight. Really enjoyed tonight's show, because I was shitting myself, to put it nicely.
Follow that curtain, Mo. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. They're all right, aren't they? You know what I mean? Mo knows what he's talking about.
Oh, if Kate is watching and his girl Lynette is there, Lynette, you'd be great on this show, you know.
I think she would. I think she got some.
You'd be better than what Kate is anyway.
Well, Kate's got good hair.
Yeah, and cheesy toes.
Webbed feet too.
Webbed feet too, yeah.
But don't forget, guys, we've got the paranormal show on Sunday with Darryl Berry, as Steve was talking about earlier on. Get yourselves tuned into that, because you know, if he just puts himself across as well on the Sunday show as what he has through messaging, you're going to be in for an absolute treat. He comes across as an absolute gentleman. He's doing a fantastic book giveaway, and somebody is going to be quite fortunate in getting this.
Definitely.
So yeah, tune in. It's going to be an absolute buzz. Yeah, adios.
Conspiracy Corner signing off until next time. Remember, knowledge is power.